So let's start off with the Houston Texans and Los Angeles Chargers, where the Texans defeated the Chargers 32 to 12. Justin Herbert had a really bad game. He went 14 of 32, 242 yards, one touchdown, four interceptions. J.K. Dobbins had 26 yards rushing, and Ladd McConkey had nine receptions for 197 yards, one touchdown. Monster game from him. Unfortunately, not enough for the Texans. CJ Stroud, 282 yards, one touchdown, one pick. Joe Mixon, 106 yards on 25 carries and a touchdown. And Nico Collins, seven receptions, 122 yards, and one touchdown. So the Texans are moving on. I'm 0-1 for this week in my picks. I thought the Chargers were going to get the better of the Texans, but no, this is really dominant performance by the Texans, by D'Amico Ryan's defense, especially. So we'll see as they move on. They're going to have to play the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead. Never easy, but, good defense. So I guess we could possibly see an upset. I don't know. I'm probably being a little too optimistic there. As for the Chargers, hey, this doesn't help the Herbert, apologists. I know, much like Tua, Herbert is constantly maligned and constantly praised by two different sections of the fan base, though I do think he's praised pretty often. But this was a disaster class of a performance by Herbert. Four interceptions, not good, not acceptable. And the Chargers have a lot to think about as they head into the offseason here. Moving on to the Ravens and Steelers game, the Steelers were defeated 28 to 14. So Russell Wilson, 270 yards, two touchdowns. Najee Harris, 17 yards rushing, not getting it done there. George Pickens, five receptions, 87 yards, one touchdown. Great game from him. Had a positive impact. You never know what you're going to get with Pickens, but it was very good. Lamar Jackson, absolute beast in this game. 175 yards, two touchdowns. Made it so hard for Pittsburgh to defend with his, potential runs. And then Derrick Henry, 186 yards, two touchdowns on the ground. And Isaiah Likely, three receptions for 53 yards to lead the way. So a lot of grumbling from Steelers fans. They want Mike Tomlin fired. He hasn't won a playoff game in years. He's, above mediocre, but that's it in the last maybe decade or so since they won the Super Bowl. I said decade since they won the Super Bowl. That was like 2008. It's been a little while. They won again in 2011, I think, for the 2010 season, but they did lose that one. So just been, a lot of falling short for this storied franchise. As for the Ravens, play like that. They have a chance. They're going to be playing Buffalo next week. That should be such an exciting game to watch for the fans. And, I'm hopeful as a Dolphins fan and a Lamar Jackson fan, but most importantly, as a Bills hater, that the Ravens will get the win there. So we will see next week. So the Buffalo Bills laid the smackdown 31-7 on the Denver Broncos to advance to the divisional round. It was 10-7 at halftime, almost 10-10. And then the Bills just dominated the second half. Bo Nix, 144 yards, one touchdown. He also led the way rushing with 43 yards on four carries. Courtland Sutton had the most receiving yards for the Broncos on five receptions. He had 75 yards. For the Bills, 272 yards, two touchdowns. James Cook, great game, 120 yards and a touchdown. And Curtis Samuel, three receptions, 68 yards, and one touchdown. So I think most of us kind of expected this to be the outcome. This is like almost a yearly tradition where the Buffalo Bills just mollywallop whoever they play in the first round. We'll see we'll see how rather they do against the Ravens next week. I think that should be a much better game. The Ravens beat them pretty handily earlier in the season, but the Bills do have a lot of players who were injured for that game who are now back uninjured. So we'll see if that changes things. It's the playoffs. Anything can happen. Both the Ravens and the Bills have been, I don't want to say chokers, but they've not gotten where they want to be in this Patrick Mahomes era. So Now they'll have to beat the shit out of each other and then probably go to Arrowhead to try to advance to the Super Bowl. So we will see what happens there. Next up, we had the Philadelphia Eagles defeating the Green Bay Packers 22-10 to advance to the divisional round. Jordan Love's 212 yards, not enough because he threw 3 interceptions. Not good. Josh Jacobs, really MVP for the Packers in this game. 81 yards and a touchdown, but he was running so hard. Gave the Packers life in some ways where they didn't have any on offense. And then Jaden Reed, 4 receptions, 46 yards. Jalen Hurts, 131 yards, 2 touchdowns. Saquon Barkley, 119 yards on the ground. And Devonta Smith, 4 receptions, 55 yards. So I think most people probably expected the Eagles to come out on top here in this game. I don't know if a lot of people thought it would feel as uncompetitive as it ended up being. I certainly didn't. But the bigger story, not the bigger story, but a big story coming out of this one is in the fourth quarter, Saquon Barkley had what seemed like an open field to run it in for a touchdown on a long run, which would have hit, a lot of rushing overs for people and, the touchdown prop, anytime touchdown score. He didn't do it. He slid to preserve the win for the Eagles, and people are unhappy. And I get being unhappy, but you know, it is what it is. This is gambling. You gamble and you lose, and that's most of the experience probably most people are having. So I don't love that it's like a national news story, but it is what it is. All right. Finally, we have the Commanders defeating the Buccaneers 23-20. Best playoff game of the weekend so far. We'll see how tonight's game goes, but Commanders win at the very end of the game to advance to beat the Buccaneers at home. And I think pretty sure I picked the Bucks here. So again, not the best look. Jaden Daniels, 268 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also had 36 yards on the ground. Damami Brown had 5 receptions, 89 yards, and a touchdown. Baker Mayfield had 185 yards, 2 touchdowns. Bucky Irving, 77 yards rushing. And Mike Evans, 7 receptions, 92 yards, and a touchdown. I think coming into this game, a lot of people figured that this would be probably one of the more exciting games on the slate, and it ended up being. These teams are very evenly matched, and now I guess we'll see how it goes in the divisional round for the Commanders. But Commanders fans have to just be absolutely enthusiastic about this. This is their first playoff win since 2005. I think also against the Buccaneers, funnily enough. And I mean, as a Dolphins fan, I've not seen the Dolphins win a playoff game since 2000. Granted, I wasn't really watching then, so I've never seen it. So I can feel a little bit of how Commander fans are feeling, and I'm very happy for them. Like, oh, I would love to experience it one day myself. So, and who knows? I mean, the playoffs, anything can happen. So we'll see what happens in the divisional round for the Commanders.